Hello everyone, hope you guys are having a great night. It is a Sunday night. It is exactly um, 11:25 on Sunday, July 8th, 2018, and I am currently making a video for my CS 222 class for the summer 2018 semester at Ball State University. And for this achievement that I'm making this video for is going to be for the Filmmaker achievement, where I have to create a video that will share and help explain a tricky concept that you can use in a 100 to 200 level computer science course. So my topic that I'm going to cover tonight, or for this achievement per se, is the use of a JFrame. So what a JFrame is a really watered down version of JavaFX. By saying that JFrame, the use of a JFrame is actually really straightforward and really simple. So a JFrame is essentially a very simple way to set up a user interface and get something out to where the user can interact with and play with and click buttons and enter text fields and get stuff back through the JFrame and get data back through it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain the tricky concepts behind the JFrame and explain each and every one of these lines so that the GUI and the window that it produces makes sense to you. So I went ahead of time and created this code. Now I'll have this code up for the rest of the video, but this code essentially is all of what the JFrame is. It's about 48 lines of code, which isn't bad at all, and there's included spaces here, which doesn't apply with code policies, but this is just to get a concept across, so don't worry. So what this does is that in order to create a JFrame, you have to create a class. This is all within one class. It doesn't have any other special modifiers with it. So it's all within one class. And what you can do is that, so the first thing you do is you have to create a class, and I just call it ta because it's late and it's almost time for bed, and I just want to get this point across. So in the class ta, we're going to extend a JFrame. So we're extending this JFrame to know that, hey, if this class is going to extend into the JFrame library. So we need some things to interact with the GUI. So we got to add those in. So I'm going to add a button, a text area, and a label right here. So I add the button, it simply says button, the JFrame text area, which I just named text area, and the JFrame label, which just says label. And yes, they're very repetitive, but I promise this should go very simply. So in the main public class, I'm calling ta again, same as my class name, but it really shouldn't be, but it's the name I went with anyway. So this is what we're going to do. We're essentially setting the layout for the JFrame. Now the layout, there's different types of layouts you can use for a JFrame. Like for mine here, I decided to use a flow pane, which sets all your different characters or all your different objects in a row from left to right. You could put it in a box flow or a box layout that sets everything from the top to the bottom. So everything starts from the top and then dwindles down to the bottom. And there's other neat different layouts you can have, to where you could have like a grid layout, a graph layout, and all these other different layouts that we could have added, but just for the sake, I just went ahead and went with a flow layout. It's a simple one, and it's very easy to get the point across. All right, so what you got to do here is that after you establish what objects you're going to have in your JFrame, you're going to essentially create the JFrame and set the variables and set values to each of these objects. Oops, my fault. Okay, so we're going to set the JFrame. So we're going to go set layout equals new flow layout. This tells you, okay, so we're going to set our new layout for our JFrame here as a flow layout. And now we're going to go through each and one of our objects here and set values to it. So we're going to go start with our label, since that's going to be the first thing that we want to display. So everything will read from top to bottom here. It'll list it out from left to right. We're going to start with our label. We're going to have new JLabel, and our new label is going to say text field. It's just going to say text field as our label. And then for our button, oh yes, and then we add the label into the flow layout. Very important step. And then you can move on to the next one and repeat the process. So we start with our button, say button, this button's going to say search. We're going to add the button, and our text area is going to be a new text area, and this 5 by 30 is the y, or is both the width and the height that we want our area. And I think 50 is a little too high. I'm going to change this to 20. There we go. And then we're going to go ahead and set this. So this is going to be my y-axis and my x-axis. So this is going to be 30 characters across and about 20 spaces down. Not characters, but spaces. Now, that's all fine and dandy. We got all of these set, which is pretty good. So what we got to do now is create an action event. So an action event is essentially going to create an event that's going to happen in the background when we do something with the GUI and the UI. For example, in this example that we're going to use, we're going to say whenever we click the button here, whatever text that is in our text area is going to replace this text field text in our label. So whenever we push the button, whatever field text we put in our text area here, it's going to replace the text in our label. So whatever we type in our text area will essentially be the label when we push the JFrame button that says search. So we got to create an event for that. So what we did is that you have to create an event, and the event name is E, and you can name it whatever you want, but you have to have the event, and then you can name event like action event or like button event, number event, that kind of thing. Establish it as a new event, and then we're going to call up our button again because our button is going to be our interactor. So whenever we click the button, it's going to add an action listener to E. So essentially when we click the button, we're going to administrate E, whatever E is. Alright, so we're going to move on down here to the action listener. This is where it's going to add the text that we need for the button. So this essentially is a class within a class. I don't know why I did this, but it got the better point across that I wanted. Okay, so essentially within this class, we need to create an action listener event, an action performed. So I created this method that says action performed with action event E, with our E event up here, and I set a string text for our text area to equal our get text. So whatever is in our text area with this line of code here, whatever's in our text area, essentially we're going to grab the text of our text area, whatever we enter in here, and we're going to set it as the variable text as a string variable. We're going to store it in there. So this is where we're going to create our if statement. So we got to create our conditions for our if statement. So if our text here is congruent to not null, or is congruent to null, or if our null is also, if this is also congruent with our null, our text is going to equal nothing, essentially. So with that conditional statement in there, we have to create our conditions. So we have to create, so when essentially if nothing is entered into our text area, we're going to spit out our label to say, please enter in some text, and it will say that. And then if there actually is something in our text area, it's going to set that text as this text. Perfect. So that's exactly what that function does. So it sets whatever text that's in text area here, and if there's nothing in here, it will say please enter in some text. But if there is something in here, it will set whatever text that is in there as our label, because that's what we set our label as down here. It's going to be entered into our label up here. Okay, now we got to create our main function. So we're going to have our public static main void and our string arguments. We're going to create a new instance of our public class here for our flow pane. So we're going to have our new, we're going to call it GUI. So our ta, which is essentially up here. So it's creating an instance of this flow pane, or our flow layout up here. And we're going to say new ta, and then we're going to have our GUI dot set default close option JFrame exit on close. So what this line of code does is essentially closes out the program when you hit on exit. So up here in the upper left hand corner you have the, on the Windows side, on a Windows machine you have them over here, but on a Mac and Linux side you have them over here where you have your exit, minimize, and maximize. So whenever you click the exit, it's going to close out the program and it's going to terminate. So that's a very important piece of code that you want to have in this program. So it's very good. So this is where it gets fun. So we're going to set our size. So we're going to put GUI.setSize. So this is going to be 400 pixels by 600 pixels. And again, this is from our, this should be our Y. So this should be 400 pixels this way, and this should be, whoops, and then we'll have 600 pixels this way from left to right, hopefully. I believe that's correct. And then you can also, what's another cool with JFrame is that you can set some of these to run in the background, that if you don't want the user to interact with, it just does it on its own. You can do that. But for now, we're going to set our GUI visible to true because we want to see it. We could set it to false and we wouldn't be able to see it, which is kind of counterproductive because we would need to interact with it somehow. So we're going to set it to true. All right, so let's go ahead and run this and we'll see what it does here. Parsing the data, checking. Okay, now it's running. Here it goes, popped up on my other screen here. Here we go. All right, so this is our program essentially. This is our JFrame. So it is a flow layout. So whenever I drag my screen this way, it'll list things from left to right, just as I said. So this is our text field that we have up here. So it's our text field. We have our search button right here, right next to it. And then we have our 20 by 30 text area, which is really cool. All right, so let's see if our program works. So I'm going to go ahead and enter in some text here. So I'm going to say, let's do a domain name. Let's go google.com. Now, what should happen is that when I hit this search button here that we have assigned, it's going to replace google.com. It's going to replace text field here with google.com because that's what we set it as. Because if once we press our button from here, it's going to enlist this action. So it's going to say, it's going to check to see if our text field is null, which it's not. It's going to set whatever text is in that field to our label right down here. So it's our else statement it's going to take. So let's see if it replaces our text field with our google.com here. Hey, how about that? Sure enough, it did. And you can do this with almost everything, really. So you could create a novel. So if I just quickly, whoops, type out some sort of short novel and hit search, it's going to replace our text area with this. Now, the reason why that moved up front here is because we are in a flow layout. So it tries to optimize with the size of the window that we have. And even if I increase this window size too, it will go back to a flow layout where we have our text, our search, and then our field. And we can switch this up too. If I close my program here and say I put the button before the label. So if I replace the button text here above label, what it's going to do, it's going to put the button before the label. So if I run it, because that's the idea with a flow layout or a box layout, whatever function or whatever object is called first, that object is added in the button or in the area first. And sure as shoot, look at that. Our search button is first before our text field. So if I enter anything within our search field again, this should still work. So if I say hello world and I hit search, sure enough, it runs perfectly. Now we can also set this to where it can enter into a button, it can enter into a graph later, but this is just a general first hands-on experience with a GUI of JFrame. that spits back code at you that you can use in a project, any sort of big group project, something that you can spit code, you can interact with it, and it will output stuff to you as well. So I hope you guys enjoyed this little demo here. We can go into more detail with it later in class if you'd like. But if you have any questions, you can let me know. If not, have a good night, guys.